So what I love about the 7-point mind training is that it's training. If we want to make spiritual progress, if we want to follow the Bodhisattva path, then here is a very down-to-earth and practical list of slogans which we can contemplate and put into action. These teachings show us how to overcome obstacles, how to actually practice wisdom and compassion in a really detailed and precise way. And I love them because there is nothing vague about it. It's very clear, this is what you do in everyday situations. So this is not my favourite slogan. But when I read out the 7 points of mind training to a friend and I got to don't be irritable, she said, oh, you could do that one. And then frantically backpedaled and said, I mean, it would just be generally useful, wouldn't it? Yeah. And I realised actually I could say quite a lot about irritation. Yeah. And without realising it, I've actually got quite a strong practice going with it. So I'm using irritation and anger kind of interchangeably in terms here. Obviously, anger is more intense and can lead to hatred. So Buddhist teaching is very clear about anger. Anger is very damaging. It harms us, it's destructive, it distorts our perception of the world. And Shantideva, who we all know and love, said, as long as the barb of hatred is in your heart, your mind will find no rest, no joy, no happiness. Because obviously, anger cannot coexist with mental peace and happiness. Holding on to anger is said to be like holding on to a red-hot coal with the intention of throwing it at somebody, but only burning yourself. And of course, the second you are angry, then you start to get views about the people that you're angry with. But in an ordinary, and it's also a part of human condition. I think anger just exists, yes? It has a place in our evolution. There's a purpose why we get angry, and it can be very energizing. In fact, Sangha actually describes anger as an explosive release of energy with a view to breaking through an obstacle. So anger doesn't necessarily involve an intention to harm, and the energy from anger can be used skillfully. So we know that a lot of social change would not have taken part in the world if people hadn't got angry and then be galvanized into action against injustice. But in an ordinary, everyday situation, irritation, if I don't train my mind, will only be damaging, especially if I don't try and control it and it becomes a regular habit. So this is a simple everyday thing that really irritates me, okay? So I'm driving uphill my little Fiat 500, yeah? Now my father taught me to drive, and it was drummed into me that you always let the downhill person coming up, you let them pass. You wait at the top and you let them pass. It's much harder to stop on a hill coming up than it is going down. So that's what, and we live in Sheffield. Yeah, it's basic common sense, decency, and good manners. Yeah? So I'm on my side of the road. I'm driving legally uphill, and someone at the top of the hill decides they're going to drive downhill, regardless of the fact that on their side there's all these parked cars. So they've got to drive down the middle and then force me into the side of the road. And then they're just going to sail past without even acknowledging me. Irritation arises. And the thing is that my whole being is affected by this. My mind and my body kind of go into kind of battle mode, absolute battle mode. Now, I was that kid at school who would never back down from a fight. I would have actually rather died than backed down from a fight. Right? So as an adult, I've got remnants of that left, definitely. And my brain and my body go, where's my sword? Hand me my shield, give me my spear. So I kind of, the person just sails away quite happily. And I'm left chunking to myself, driving on. So I've been hit by the first arrow of irritation, followed by the second arrow of holding on to my irritation, followed by the third arrow of I am an RBB, a really bad Buddhist. The irritation arises, it just does. It's part of the human condition because behind it is dukkha. our dissatisfaction with the way that we think things are. But the slogan is very clear: don't be irritable. So the slogan, all the slogans are there to prod us along, chip away at the views and the attitudes that hinder our progress, and slowly wean us away from seeing everything through a lens of sort of self-obsession and self-interest. The slogans show us that the Dharma is present in every situation. So if I am angry or irritated, this is my practice. What I'm going to do with it and how I use it is what's going to help me to progress. So chapter 6 of the Bodhicharyavatara is devoted to Kshanti, the development of patience, which is the antidote to irritation. And he says if you read it repeatedly, it will gradually weaken our propensity to anger. And clearly I don't read it often enough. But when I feel irritated, this is what I used to do. I don't do it now, this is what I used to do. Number one, think about the conditioning of that person, right? All the things that have brought them to this point in their life where they do a thing like that. And then try and feel compassion. Yeah. Doesn't work. And try to feel compassion. Because the problem with irritation is that it instantly cuts off connection to the other person. There's no connection anymore. If I'm with a person and they are irritating me in some way, I can read their face, I can read their body language, I can see their facial expressions. There's still that connection. And I can work with that because the person's in front of me and I can feel empathy and I can generate compassion and I can think what it's like to walk in their shoes. Yeah. If I'm in a car, I'm physically cut off. There is no connection. It's much harder for me to feel compassion. It just reinforces, duality and my sense of being separate. So that never worked. So I tried thinking about my conditioning. Okay, this was slightly more effective. Lots of views going on there, Janet. And I know if I dig away at my views and the views beneath the views, somewhere down there is a belief that life should be fair and just. That's how life should be, fair and just. And it absolutely would be, if people only behaved how I want them to. Yep. And then my world would be secure and safe with everybody behaving properly, according to Janet. Yeah. But I can't change people's behavior. I can't eliminate irritation by fixing the world because I can't fix the world. So this is where I am with irritation now. Irritation arises, it just does. It's a habit. It's a part of human conditioning. It doesn't make me a bad person. And actually, it's not a problem. 2 minutes left? Yeah. It's just a feeling that has arisen. So my first step is awareness. And just recognizing that I am irritated, because I feel the change in my body, I know what's happening. My second step is breathe, just breathe. As it's such an embodied feeling, I need to calm my body down. I need to get out of battle mode. So I send my body signals that everything is fine by breathing slowly and carefully. I'm not in danger. There is no battle. I don't need the sword. Everything is fine. By the third breath, the other car's gone. My third step is making a choice. So when irritation arises, I can keep it or act on it. Either way, I'm the one it causes harm to. The anger isn't in the other person, the anger is in me. I'm better off letting go because the other person, the car's gone, so why am I causing myself suffering? And also, don't feel guilty. No BBC, bad Buddhist complex. Anger doesn't make me a bad person and guilt is just destructive. Fourth step, think of someone that you know who is particularly skilled in handling this situation that's causing such irritation and channel them, just channel that person, yeah? So for me, it's a case of WWDD, what would daddy do, yeah? My father was an excellent driver and a very calm, tolerant person who was so patient with other drivers. He told me that when you're driving a car, you are in charge of a potentially dangerous weapon. He was an army man, yeah. So never be overwhelmed by your anger when you're driving a car, because you will do something stupid. So, and this is the point of the mind training. Anger is just a common human emotion. But if I don't recognize it, if I don't train my mind, if I don't know how to deal with it, then it can be destructive. If I want to be happy and I want to make progress, then I'm going to have to work at it. And it's not easy. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, so my mind training slogan is don't expect thanks. And so I thought to contextualize this a bit, I'd start with a koan. So for anyone that doesn't know, a koan is a kind of an anecdotal riddle that contains a paradox or contradiction without an obvious solution. It's often used in Zen Buddhism to demonstrate the inadequacy of logical reasoning. Is this right? Is this right? I can't make sense of it. And after a lot of doing that, some other kind of understanding emerges. So some of you might have heard this koan before. I think Alex told me this a long time ago. So I'm very grateful to him for that. So I'll just read you the koan to start with and just immerse yourself in the sense of that. And I think this will give a bit of context to the mind training precept. So Saisetsu, the master of Engaku in Kamakura, Japan, once felt the need for larger quarters, since those in which he was teaching were overcrowded. Umeza, a merchant of Edo, decided to donate 500 pieces of gold towards the construction of a more spacious and beautiful school. He brought this money to the master. "All right, I'll take it," said the master. The merchant handed over the sack of gold to the master, but was dissatisfied with his attitude. One might live a whole year on 3 pieces of gold, and the merchant had not even been thanked for 500. "In that sack is 500 gold, hinted the merchant. "You told me that before," replied the master. "Even if I am a wealthy merchant, 500 gold is a lot of money," said the merchant. "Do you want me to thank you for it?" asked the master. "You ought to," replied the merchant. "Why should I?" inquired the master. "The giver should be thankful." So the giver should be thankful. I think to me, this koan helpfully elaborates on this mind training slogan, highlighting that to even expect thanks in the first place, something has to be done or by someone or given by someone, perhaps at a great cost to them. The merchant in this koan has given an extraordinary amount of money to his master, and in turn he expects an extraordinary thank you. But he doesn't really get one, at least not in the way he was expecting. Instead, he gets a teaching about giving and receiving gifts. So I think to me, this slogan really is about the dana paramita, or the perfection of giving, which is exemplified by the hand gesture or mudra of supreme giving, through open-handed generosity, as exemplified by the Buddha Ratnasambhava. To give with such open-handedness, I think, is to give from a place of inner abundance. And when we give in this way, it's done spontaneously, from a place of deep compassion and wisdom. We simply do what needs to be done and do not need thanks because there is no sense of loss. In its highest, there's not even a sense of a separate person who gives or receives, and no sense of gift. However, a lot of what we give, all of us, whether it's money, time, energy, culture, or Dharma teaching, is not given from a place of complete fullness and inner riches. It's instead given with at least some level of expectation. A part of us might hope that people buy us little thank you favours for the gifts that we buy them, lend us a hand to move house or drive us somewhere, lend their ear when we are distressed, or even thank and praise us for giving a Dharma talk. A part of us might expect a tit for tat, a quid pro quo, and I'll scratch your Buddhist back if you scratch mine. But expecting a thank you or something in return, in fact, expecting anything at all, is something that undermines the skillfulness of the action. I think one example where I feel the sting of this expectation for thanks and for the closely related worldly wind of praise is around giving talks. Now, I'm relatively new to this, and I have Paranita to thank for the 2 opportunities I've had recently to speak. And something I've noticed come up both times are the trains of thought that go something like, oh, this is going to be excellent. I must be so clever to have been asked to do a talk. What clever things can I say? People will shower me in thanks and praise for the good job that I will do. So-and-so order member will love this. Oh, wow, look at me. See how capable I am. La-di-da-di-da. Yeah, it goes on. And it's this kind of train of thought, this expectation of thanks, that actually at points gets in the way of writing the talk, of doing what simply needs to be done. I think the other side of this expectation is the anxiety actually that I feel on the day in the doing of the activity, and perhaps a little bit right now. The expectation for thanks has been set so high that I can find it difficult just to be present and relax into whatever I've managed to write for fear that the thanks will not come. In the writing and delivering of this talk, and in dealing with expectations around praise and thanks more generally, what's helped me is to consider the question, is what I'm saying or doing right now done with the intention of helping others? As this pulls me outside of my narrow, imprisoning views and expectations about myself, and inches me closer to the unlimited compassionate giving of the Bodhisattva. Something else I find helpful is looking for any pleasure I can find in the action itself. Whatever the action is, as this can reduce the need to be acknowledged for it. And I think this is especially true if it's a long or difficult task or something that I'm resistant to doing. In this way, I can do something not because I have to or because someone's asked me to, or because there's some kind of promise of praise or some kind of outcome, but simply because there's pleasure in the act itself. The path is the goal. So I'm trying to use this talk right now as a practice of the slogan. Thank you all. Trying to see that it's not about how I'm perceived or not perceived as I stand here, maybe rushing through my words, sweating on stage. It's not about the, oh, that was very helpful, thank you so much, that may or may not come afterwards, but about whether I'm enjoying doing it and about whether I'm trying to give something that can point, however imperfectly, in the direction of truth. Another thing I've noticed in myself is that if or when thanks do come, part of me that was expecting them sometimes doesn't want to hear them. I can be dismissive or belittle any successes, shrug it off saying, it was nothing, or go and seek constructive feedback. One of the first things I did after the last talk I gave was to seek this kind of critical feedback, whilst only half hearing the positives. And I realize this is damaging on 2 fronts. It's a kind of conceit where I place myself as lower than what I really am, which only serves to hinder a sense of positive spiritual pride. And it also rejects someone else's gift of praise and denies them an experience of mudita, which is the vicarious joy at someone else's positive qualities, as an incredibly skillful mental state. So accepting praise, if it comes, is therefore something I'm consciously trying to attend more to. I think the final thing I wanted to say was, because the key to this slogan is the word expect, this does not mean do not be thankful for others or do not express your thanks. The failure to express our thanks, I think, is as detrimental as our expectation of them. So I see the slogan as therefore the counterpart of one of the other slogans, which was be grateful to everybody. If you have no expectations of thanks from others and only gratitude for them, whatever they end up doing, whatever their response, you'll be able to keep giving, no matter the task at hand, from a truly unlimited perspective. So to twist the slogan a little, I say something to myself like, don't expect thanks, but do accept and express thanks. In not expecting thanks, I keep in touch with my present experience and remain alive to what is needed. In accepting thanks, I nourish the parts of myself that do not yet feel they are rich enough yet to give wholeheartedly. And in expressing thanks, especially to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and my teachers, I take the first steps that move me beyond my narrow self-views and into a more spacious and beautiful way of being in the world. Now, much like the merchant of the koan, the gold you have given me all this evening is your attention. But as I am no master, I will thank you all deeply for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kai. Okay, so the last one, my slogan is work on your strongest disturbing emotion first. Work on your strongest disturbing emotion first. So I chose the slogan because the recent years have been quite challenging. I've had some quite difficult, challenging life events, and this has been one really difficult aspect of it, has been kind of strong, disturbing emotion. Mostly for me in the form of anxiety. And I was thinking, after I'd written this, I was like, oh no, I don't even know if anxiety is an emotion, and maybe I've got the slogan wrong. So it definitely is anxiety. So yeah, anxiety and sort of fear. I jokingly call it with my friends my doom and dread emotion, so I can really get into that. So I'll talk about how I work with that, the slogan, work with this strong disturbing emotion first. So when it's really strong emotion, it's quite hard, isn't it? Because it's really unpleasant, to say the least. Sometimes it's really intensely kind of painful and frightening, these really strong emotions. So I think to just like tackle it head on can be really harsh, and that's not the way. So I think it's got to have kindness. So it's really got to have metta first and foremost. So for me, metta can be kind of knowing that if I practice with this, it'll benefit myself and it'll also benefit others. So for me, particularly my children and my friends, I can find that much more motivating than just wanting to end my own suffering. I can be a bit of a martyr with that. So really, that's where I would find my metta and my motivation. So when I'm starting with working with a really strong emotion, I would start by deconstructing it a little bit, trying to kind of dismantle it a little bit when it's really strong. So I would try to notice that the emotion has got two different aspects to it. So it's got a feeling in the body, a direct sensation, feeling in my body, what we would call Vedana, and it's also got thoughts involved in it. So it's got Papancha. So it's got feeling in the body and thought. So it's got Vedana and it's got Papancha. And so the first aspect, Papancha, there'll be thoughts going on. So maybe with anxiety, I would be thinking, oh no, what a nightmare. I don't know what's going to happen now, or, oh no, I'm anxious again, that's awful. Or I'd think, oh no, they've done this really awful thing, what can I do? So lots of thinking, so that's the Papancha. The second aspect of the emotion would be the feeling and sensation in my body, which would be the Vedana, just bare sensation. So it's not emotion, it's different, it's the bare sensation, it's an aspect of the emotion, so there's a difference. So with anxiety, I might just have really cold hands, or maybe my legs feel very heavy, something like that, a direct sensation in my body, the Vedana. So if I'm working with a really strong kind of consuming emotion, I would look at one aspect at a time. So either the feeling or the thought, because weakening one weakens the other, they come together. So I would look at whichever is the strongest of those first. And usually for me, it's the thoughts. So usually the most obvious and strongest aspect of a strong emotion would be the Papancha and the thinking. So going round and round and round in my head with like the fears and the worries, kind of planning and worrying, that's what I would be doing. So with the thoughts, the practices that I would tend to do is, one really good one would be chanting mantra, usually just internally. But chanting a mantra will protect my mind from doing that. I can't wholeheartedly chant a mantra, even internally, and worry at the same time. I don't think it's possible. So it can give me a really lovely sense of kind of ease and peace, if I can do that. My very favourite practice when I've got a lot of thinking and a lot of worrying going on is reflecting on the Heart Sutra. So when I'm walking in nature, reflecting on the Heart Sutra, walking in the woods, it's my perfect practice. I love it. It's really absorbing and beautiful and true. So it kind of woos my mind into loving it. It sort of lifts my mind quite directly and gives me a bigger perspective, because the teachings in the Heart Sutra are kind of vast, aren't they? So then my everyday worries, even if they're very serious objectively, they don't seem so consuming in given this big perspective. And another practice I will do with thinking is that I memorize and then reflect on Dharma texts. So my favorite is the Hymn to Perfect Wisdom, which comes from the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines, and I don't learn 8,000 lines. But the bit that I do learn, the Hymn to Perfect Wisdom, it is quite long and it's quite hard to remember. So the remembering of it, actually, trying to remember it, is quite absorbing in itself and gives me a focus. And the text itself is just filled with beauty and wisdom, and it's very devotional. So again, that would really expand my perspective of how things are. And if the thoughts are a little bit quieter, I can just reflect on them. Well, are they true? Is this right view? Is this in line with reality? What I'm thinking, is it true? Is it in line with the Dharma? So with anxiety, quite often I'm thinking, oh no, it's going to be terrible. I'm going to have this terrible future and everything's going to go wrong. I've got particular conditioning around financial fears. So how it would go is, I've just paid a bill, just an ordinary bill, and then I go, oh no, I'm really skint now. Oh no, I'm never going to manage. Oh no, I'm going to be absolutely destitute and totally homeless forever. And when you say that out loud, it's like really silly. But I can really, it can really take a hold of me. It can really get hold of me and be quite terrifying. So first of all, I just have to notice, oh, what are you doing? What are you thinking? What is that? And then I can reflect, well, is it true? Is it likely? And the main wrong view is that I can't predict the future. I just can't predict it. So even if things do go wrong, they never go wrong in the way that I thought they were going to go wrong. I'm never right about that. So I can reflect on, I can't predict the future. I don't really know what's going to happen, but I do know for certain, because of the law of karma, that if I take care of my habits of mind right now and cultivate a skillful mind, that will make me happier in the future, no matter what the stuff that I can't predict. Okay, so that's practicing with the thoughts, part of the emotion. And I would also look at the feeling too, as well, if that's quite strong. So the main thing I would do is to become aware of the sensations that are all kicking off in my body and try to care for them with some kindness, because it can be really unpleasant and I really quite often don't want to feel it. So with my big anxiety, doom and dread thing, I'll just notice, oh, I've got cold hands, that kind of adrenaline. Is that 8 minutes? Yeah, thank you. When you've got that kind of adrenaline, cold hands. So I just would feel that and go, where is it? What is it? What's it like? And is it changing? And just being with the sensation. And maybe my tummy has got tightness and aching, scrunching. Just feeling that, just being with it and feeling it. And maybe heaviness in my legs, just feeling that as a sensation. Sometimes kind of with anxiety, maybe tightness in my chest or energy or motion around that kind of area. So instead of going, or maybe heat and energy. So instead of going, oh no, I feel really panicky and anxious, I can just go, oh, there's some heat and energy and movement around that area, just directly. And I think just feeling it, being with it, with the kindness and care, just caring for it, it just wants to be seen. It's just bodily sensation, that's all. And that in itself is not as scary or as bad as kind of all the ideas I've got about it. So just being with it, it's just stuff in the body. It's never unbearable. And also like having an anchor in the body as well, if this is happening. So looking for places in my body that are actually at ease or feel warm or feel relaxed, even when there's the unpleasant sensations, there's always somewhere. Quite often, like in the palms of my hands, my hands might be cradled in a blanket if I'm meditating. They feel quite warm. There's maybe a little bit of tingling. They feel really nice and warm and safe. So just having an anchor and coming back to that as well is something that I would do. Okay, so it all seems quite complex. But the point really is that I'm trying to split it into what's actually going on and look directly at it rather than the big kind of, oh no. So I'm just trying to see that emotion isn't a solid and fixed thing that I'm at the mercy of that's just happening and that I can't get away from it. It's not like that. So I'll be trying to look at it and unpick it with kindness. And then it sort of loses its hold over me, it loses its power, and I lose my belief in it being my boss or being in charge of me or being consuming. And I can see that actually it's fine really, because it's just stuff that's arising according to the conditions that are there, and then it's passing away. And actually there's nothing really wrong with that, it's just occurring, it's just conditions coming into play and passing away. So if I can relax and just let it all pass through, like emotional weather really, then it gradually will become less and less strong and less disturbing, and there'll be some ease and peace and freedom.